Alrighty, Scallywags, we're back here and we're talking about spongy bone. So spongy bone, last video we discussed compact bone, now we're getting to the spongy bone. So remember, there's the layer of periosteum around a long bone, then compact bone, and then the spongy bone is the innermost layer there. So spongy bone, there is lots of space in spongy bone that's filled with red bone marrow and yellow bone marrow. So the different structures of, there's different components of spongy bone, just like there was with compact bone, but there's these plates of bone called trabeculae. So trabeculae, they're plates of bone. They're the structural unit of the spongy bone. Look up a pic online of these, it'll make it a little bit clearer, but trabeculae, plates of bone, the structural unit of spongy bone. So they're pretty much synonymous to the osteon of compact bone. So the osteon is the structural unit of compact bone. The trabeculae is the structural unit of spongy bone there. So in spongy bone, different from compact bone, there's no central canal. Instead, has red bone marrow on the outside, which actually diffuses into the inside, into the spongy bone there. So yeah, that's how they receive their oxygen and nutrients. The spongy bone is the red bone marrow on the outside, diffuses inward to the spongy bone to provide the nutrients. So no central canal with the spongy bone. They get their nutrients from the diffusion instead of the central canal moving outward. So the endosteum is another part of the spongy bone. That's on the perimeter of the trabeculae. So surrounding the trabeculae, the plates of the bone, the structural unit of the spongy bone is trabeculae. It's the lining of bone tissue essentially, and it's mostly osteoblast. So with spongy bone, the spongy bone grows outside in, and so there's older cells on the inside of spongy bone, newer cells on the outside of spongy bone. So it's actually opposite to compact bone. So compact bone grows inside out. With spongy bone grows outside in. So it's because those osteoblasts are surrounding it, and osteoblasts are the immature cells, and they build the cell. So essentially the cell gets built outside in, older cells on the inside of spongy bone. And then there's, last but certainly not least, there's parallel lamella, which are circular layers of bone. They're very similar to the concentric lamella of the compact bone, which we just discussed there. So there's definitely some similarities between compact bone and spongy bone, but there's quite a few differences that are very, very important as well. So with spongy bone, they're mostly osteoblasts cells, but there's also some osteoclasts. And as the spongy bone forms, there are osteocytes with caniculi. So both spongy bone, compact bone have osteocytes, have caniculi, have osteoblasts, have osteoclasts. Obviously, spongy bone is mostly osteoblasts. Trabeculae is going to be with the spongy bone. Osteon is going to be in with the compact bone. And that really hits it. They both are vascular, although the spongy bone is a little bit more vascular, but both spongy bone and compact bone do have a blood supply, so they are able to receive nutrients, and that's due to those canaliculi from the osteocytes there. But that's a spongy bone. So spongy bone, there's the trabeculae, structural unit, no central canal, endosteum, which is the perimeter of the trabeculae. It's the lining of bone tissue. It's mostly osteoblasts. Spongy bone grows outside in. There's parallel lamella, which is the circular layers of bone tissue, and mostly osteoblasts, some osteoclasts with spongy bone. And then once again, once the bone forms, there's osteocytes with canaliculi. So that's the spongy bone. Check it out. Make sure you know the spongy bone and the compact bone, the similarities and differences between the two.